For more than 50 years, David Thompson carried one question deep in his heart. What happened to the woman I fell in love with in Vietnam? Most people spend their lives trying to leave the past behind. David spent his life searching for it. As he approached his 80th birthday, he made one final decision to return to Vietnam. He wasn't looking for adventure. He wasn't looking for answers from history. He was searching for the one woman he had never stopped loving. But nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to discover. Because waiting for him in Vietnam was a life-changing surprise he never saw coming. More than 50 years ago, in the middle of the Vietnam War, an American soldier fell deeply in love with a gentle Vietnamese woman. Their time together was short, but every moment they shared became a memory that neither of them would ever forget. While the world around them was filled with fear, explosions, and uncertainty, they found comfort in each other's company. For a brief moment, love gave them hope in the middle of chaos. Then everything changed. As the war came to an end, the United States ordered its troops to leave Vietnam immediately. There was no time for goodbyes. No chance to explain. No opportunity to promise that they would meet again. David boarded the helicopter with a broken heart, leaving behind the woman he loved more than anything. For over 50 years, that moment never left him. Now nearly 80 years old, David Thompson is a retired American Vietnam veteran living in Texas. Although he built a new life after returning home, married, raised 2 children, and worked hard for decades, there was always one part of his heart that remained in Vietnam. Many nights he woke up soaked in sweat after dreaming about the same woman. He could still remember her beautiful smile, her gentle eyes, and the heartbreaking look on her face the last time he saw her. As the years passed and retirement gave him more time to reflect on his life, those memories became stronger instead of fading away. Every evening, David would sit quietly in front of an old photograph of the two of them, wondering if she was still alive. Did she ever marry? Did she have a happy life? Or had she been waiting for him all these years? The questions haunted him day after day. Finally, after more than half a century, David made the biggest decision of his life. He would return to Vietnam. Not as a soldier, but as an old man searching for the woman he had never stopped loving. The flight from Texas to Ho Chi Minh City lasted nearly 20 hours, but David couldn't sleep for even a minute. Every time he closed his eyes, memories came rushing back. He remembered walking hand in hand with her through the streets of old Saigon. He remembered the laughter they shared at small sidewalk cafes. He remembered how they smiled at each other, trying to ignore the sound of helicopters and gunfire in the distance. Those memories were no longer just memories. They had become the reason for his journey home. When David finally arrived in Ho Chi Minh City, he felt as if time had folded back on itself. The modern skyline, crowded streets, and endless stream of motorbikes were nothing like the Saigon he had known decades ago. Yet beneath all the changes, something still felt familiar. He began searching immediately. With nothing more than an old photograph and a heart full of hope, David walked through District 1, stopping anyone who looked old enough to remember the city before 1975. He visited narrow alleyways, small coffee shops, old neighborhoods, and every place he and the young Vietnamese woman had once shared together. Each time he showed the faded photograph, he asked the same question. Have you ever seen this woman? Most people simply shook their heads. Others looked carefully before apologizing. Some offered a few vague memories, but none led anywhere. As the hours turned into days, David's hope slowly began to fade. One afternoon, exhausted from walking under the hot tropical sun, he sat alone in his hotel room. He placed the old photograph on the table and stared at it for a long time. The edges of the picture had faded with age, but her smile was still there. He whispered softly to himself, "Where are you now? Did life treat you kindly? Do you still remember me?" That night, sleep finally came, but not in the way he expected. In his dream, he was young again. He saw her standing beside him with the same beautiful smile he had carried in his heart for more than 50 years. She looked into his eyes and spoke gently. David, if we ever have a future together, I only want one thing. He smiled and asked, What is it? She replied, I want us to live near Ben Thanh Market. That's my favorite place. It's where so many of our happiest memories were made. Then she smiled, turned around, and slowly disappeared into the crowd. David suddenly woke up. His heart was pounding. The room was completely silent. He looked at the clock. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. Without wasting another second, he got dressed, grabbed the old photograph, and rushed out of the hotel. For the first time since arriving in Vietnam, he knew exactly where he had to go. Ben Thanh Market. He believed that if fate still had one final gift waiting for him, it would begin there. As the first rays of sunlight lit up Ho Chi Minh City, David arrived at Ben Thanh Market. The market was already alive. Street vendors were setting up their stalls. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the air. Tourists and locals hurried past each other as another busy day began. But David wasn't there to shop. He was searching for the woman who had lived in his heart for more than 50 years. With the old photograph clutched tightly in his hand, he walked slowly through every corner of the market. He stopped at food stalls, souvenir shops, small family businesses, and even the elderly street vendors sitting quietly along the sidewalks. Each time, he showed them the faded picture and asked the same question. Do you know this woman? Some people smiled politely. Others studied the photograph for a moment before gently shaking their heads. Hour after hour, David continued searching. The tropical heat became almost unbearable. His shirt was soaked with sweat. His legs ached from walking. But he refused to give up. This was the journey he had waited more than half a century to make. By late afternoon, hope was slipping away. David slowly walked toward the market entrance, feeling emotionally exhausted. He whispered to himself, Maybe I came too late. Maybe I'll never see her again. With a heavy heart, he turned toward the street, ready to call a taxi back to his hotel. Then, everything changed. Across the sidewalk, an elderly woman selling drinks looked up. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, time seemed to stop. There was something strangely familiar about her eyes. Older, filled with the weight of many difficult years, but unmistakably familiar. David froze. His heart pounded so loudly he could barely breathe. His lips trembled as he took one slow step forward. Then another. Finally, in a trembling voice, he whispered, Are you La Hang? The elderly woman stared at him in disbelief. She looked carefully at his face, his white hair, his tear-filled eyes. Then suddenly, her own eyes widened. Barely able to speak, she whispered, David, is it really you? Neither of them moved for a second. Then, without another word, they rushed into each other's arms. Right there on the crowded sidewalk outside Ben Thanh Market. Two people separated by more than 50 years finally found each other again. They cried openly, not caring who was watching, not caring about the traffic, or the crowds passing by. For everyone else, it was just another ordinary afternoon. But for David and La Hang, it was the moment they had both been waiting for their entire lives. They spent the next hour talking non-stop, sharing memories, asking questions, filling in 50 years of silence. Yet David had no idea. The greatest surprise of his life was still waiting for him. After talking for nearly an hour outside Ben Thanh Market, La Hang looked at David and smiled gently. There is someone I want you to meet. Without asking any questions, David followed her through a narrow alley just a few minutes from the market. The neighborhood still carried the charm of old Saigon. Small homes stood side by side. Children laughed in the distance. For a moment, it felt as though time had stood still. Laheng opened the door to a modest but tidy house. As David stepped inside, he noticed a middle-aged man sitting quietly in a wooden chair. The man slowly looked up. For a brief second, David felt something he couldn't explain. The man's face, his eyes, even the shape of his nose. It was like looking at a younger version of himself. Neither of them spoke. The room fell completely silent. Then Laheng gently placed her hand on David's shoulder. Her voice trembled as tears filled her eyes. "David! He's your son." David stood frozen. He could hardly breathe. My son?" Lu Hang nodded. "When you left Vietnam, I had already discovered that I was pregnant. I wanted to tell you, but you were gone." She explained how difficult life had been after the war. Children born to American fathers often faced discrimination. People judged them. Many families struggled just to survive. Even so, she chose to keep the baby and raise him with all the love she had. Years later, she married another man who accepted both mother and son as his own family. He treated them with kindness until the day he passed away. Since then, it had been only the two of them. David could no longer hold back his tears. For more than 50 years, he never knew he had a son. Slowly, he walked toward the man. His hands trembled. His voice cracked with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't there to watch you grow up. I didn't even know you existed." The man looked into David's eyes. For years, he had wondered who his biological father was. Now the answer stood right in front of him. Without saying another word, he stepped forward and embraced David. Father and son held each other tightly, both overwhelmed by emotions that words could never fully express. More than 50 years of separation ended with one unforgettable hug. That evening, they talked for hours, sharing family stories, looking through old photographs, laughing, crying, making up for the lifetime they had lost. In the days that followed, David made a decision that surprised everyone. He would not return to America. Instead, he chose to remain in Vietnam, close to the woman he had never stopped loving, and beside the son he had only just found. Near Ben Thanh Market, David rented a small storefront and opened a simple food shop serving American-style hot dogs with a Vietnamese touch. His son helped manage the business, while Laheng finally retired after decades of hard work. Every evening, the three of them would sit together outside their home, sharing dinner, telling stories, and enjoying the peace they had waited a lifetime to find. Sometimes, life gives us a second chance. Not to erase the past, but to heal it. David's journey reminds us that true love never completely disappears. No matter how many years pass, some promises remain alive in the heart, waiting for the day they can finally be fulfilled. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and join us for more unforgettable stories from around the world. We'll see you in the next video.